Hey, I'm Matt Marcellino. I'm an attorney with Marcellino and Tyson, and this is Jennifer Moore. She's also an attorney here at the law firm. Today, we're going to be talking about what is the date of separation in a family law context. We get this question a lot.
Yes.
And it actually is pretty important, right?
Very.
Believe it or not, in
Yes.
more than one context.
Yes.
So, this is a question we typically get from a lot of folks. If you've been looking at some of our other podcasts, we're trying to go through the regular questions we get from like during consultations, right? What is this? What is this? How does this play into? And the date of separation always comes up.
Yep.
Because not everybody, but there are some folks that are looking to maybe cut that corner, right?
Oh, yeah.
Trim a little bit down.
Yes.
But so when you get that question in a consultation, what is the date of separation? How do you explain that to someone?
It is when one of you moves out of the house that y'all share together into a separate home with the intent to end your marital relationship. So 2 separate roofs and the intent to end the relationship. Mm-hmm. That's the big kicker right there. So that does not mean living in the guest bedroom.
Yeah.
That does not mean living in the mother-in-law suite above the outdoor garage. It's you actually have to move to a separate home.
Do both parties have to be in agreement that they're separating?
Nope. It's just one person has to have that intent to end the marital relationship.
Right.
So
what about this scenario? Would it be considered data separation if there was a house that had a basement with its own exit and entry point and own mailing address?
Oh.
Yeah. Could that be considered separation if they moved into let's call it the downstairs unit?
How would there be its own mailing address?
Yeah, that's easy. You can do that. Let's pretend like you can, because I know that you can, right? So let's say because to your point, right, they can't just go down the hall and sleep in the guest bedroom. We know that that's not a separation, right?
Yeah.
They must physically move out of the marriage. Essentially is what's happening here.
Okay,
right?
This feels like a trick question. I've been doing this a long time and I've never seen that work, so I'm going to say no.
Oh, no, it's true.
It's true? You can do that?
Yeah, because there are some homes, or think of like a duplex scenario, right?
Yeah.
So if
well,
somebody
duplex, sure.
Sure, but if you're living in Unit A and somebody moves into Unit B, that's obviously separation, right?
Yes.
So the same kind of exists if it was an upstairs, downstairs, where you have a basement sort of apartment, right?
That makes some sense.
But
All right, learn something new every day.
Yeah, but there's
Matt Marcellino, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, but they can't theoretically, they can't go in and out of the same front door that the other person is using, right? Mm-hmm. So there has to be their own exit, so their front door downstairs, right?
Right.
So that is something that is permissible. There's case law on it, so it's pretty interesting.
That
right?
is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what is so aside from you beginning the separation process, so how about this in North Carolina, when do we use the date of separation, in what context?
So it's really important for triggering the time frame in which you can begin the absolute divorce process. So you have to be separated for more than 1 year. So 1 year and 1 day, you can begin the absolute divorce process. Yeah. Something we're going to tackle in another podcast.
That's right.
So that's number one. And then number 2 is it cuts off the marital estate. As of that date, marital property can no longer be acquired. Mm-hmm. So when we're dealing with property distribution, we're classifying and valuing assets generally as of date of separation.
Right. Yeah. So the date. Yeah. So that's what I kind of tell everyone as well. It's like, one, that date of separation is important because that begins that year-long process. Mm-hmm. Before you can even file a complaint for divorce, which you said we're going to get into later. We will. Yeah. But it's also because, we're trying to value assets and debts, right? From an equitable distribution standpoint. How do we value those things? Well, there's got to be a cutoff.
Right.
What is that cutoff? That cutoff is the date of separation.
Yes.
Right.
And then some questions we get are, what if people are intimate in the year afterward? And does that restart the date of separation? And what if they move back in together for just like a little while? Or I had a case once where the husband had surgery and he needed somebody to take care of him. And so wife moved back in to take care of him for a little while and then moved back out. Does that change the date of separation? So while we would love for it to be cut and dry, and I think I would say 80% of the time it's cut and dry, there is that 20% that gets a little murky sometimes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you duke out what date of separation is in a courtroom.
Yeah, sometimes people dispute when that date of separation is, right? And
yes.
Sometimes it could be years apart.
Yes.
Right, and ultimately what's might be going on is there's a clear disagreement as to when they separated.
Right.
But it's also about what's the value of those assets and debts.
Right. Yes.
So something might have appreciated over time, so a later date of separation means a larger asset value.
Yeah.
Right? So that does happen as well.
Yes.
But I'm curious, so the nice lady that moved back in with her intended ex-husband to take care of him after the hospital, did that have to restart the clock on the data separation?
No, because I successfully argued that there wasn't any intent to resume the relationship. You know, they had an intent to end the relationship. Her only intent in moving back in was to take care of him, and she did, and then she left again. So that intent is really important. If there wasn't the intent to resume the relationship, then there's no resumption.
Right. Which is the same logic then applied to, you said, the occasional intimate encounters during that separation period between, husband and wife, because the intent is not to resume the marital relationship. They're intending to do something else.
There's another intent there.
But
there is,
not to resume the marriage, right?
Right.
So that doesn't make you have to start all over again.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you do move in, if you reconcile, right?
Yes.
And you're like, okay, let's give this another go. We'll go through counseling and so forth and whatever they might be doing. They move back in and kind of start over, then you're starting over.
That's right. Yep.
So,
yes. Oh, you were going to say something at the same time as me.
I think it's like always important to have a conversation with clients about how to, in my opinion, how to like nail down that data separation. So some advice that I typically give to folks is like, look, especially if the other person doesn't know this is about to happen, right? Or maybe there's been discussions, but it's still a discussion. Like I think it's most important to avoid that dispute as to when the data separation occurs. So I always say like, look, as cold as it is, send an email or a text sometime shortly after your date of separation, just confirming that that's what happened.
Right. This is your intent.
That's right.
Right.
So and then send that to your attorney or save it in your Gmail or whatever it might be, just in case you need it. More often than not, like you said, 80% of the time, probably even higher than that, it's not disputed.
Right.
But when it is, stuff like that would be very helpful.
Right. I agree.
You really don't want, the divorce process already takes long enough. You really don't want to tack on another 3 or 4 months because of the dispute.
You're having to fight that.
Right.
Yes.
Yep. So that's the date of divorce, date of separation.
Yeah, we're going to talk about divorce next.
You're right. It was just in my brain. I thought we were going to be talking about that. So that is the date of separation. It's important.
Yes.
So when you go to your consultation, right, and you talk to some lawyers, maybe us if we're lucky, make sure you have a conversation about all those things as well as anything else you've seen on any of our podcasts that is maybe confusing to you or you might have more questions about.
Or pertinent to your case.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
I wish we had a sign off.
We need a sign off.